So, hey guys, long time no see. It's Ivy. I've decided to lightly get back into YouTube as mainly because I like looking back on things that I've done with my ponies in such vivid detail. And I feel like it's another way to interact with my followers so they can really get to know me rather than just the words I type on my socials and whatever I decide to post. So for my first video back, I just really wanted to explain the whole finding a new horse struggle I've had ever since I let go of Leisha, my Connemara pony that I had for 3.5 years. So for a little bit of context, for anyone who is unfamiliar, I bought Leisha as a Greenbroke 3-year-old and I trained her up as my main ride. We were training medium dressage, competing at novice, training about 1m10 and competing 1m5 show jumping and eventing at 95 centimeters. At one stage we had concerns about her left hind leg that just wasn't tracking through correctly, and she was seemingly misdiagnosed with some health issues, where we made the choice to retire her from jumping, even though it wasn't necessary. Not long after, my coach at the time and I decided to swap ponies after trialling them for a few weeks. So my coach at the time had a really reputable vet come and take x-rays where the health issues sites were for over an hour, and he couldn't find anything at all, so we put it down to the original x-rays probably being taken from bad angles, and she was cleared for work. The hind leg improved with the training of my coach at the time, so it really just was my weakness being reflected through my horse's work. It wasn't actually a big health thing apparently. So really she could have kept jumping, but we had already trialled ponies for 6 weeks and I honestly felt like I was too deep in to back out. But I also was really enjoying Hillary and she was teaching me a lot, and I was going to sell Leisha at the end of the year anyway, so we swapped. I'm just going to provide a big trigger warning now, as what I'm about to say is a very sensitive topic and is also not at all suitable for younger audiences. So please pause and exit the video if you don't want to listen to it, or skip to the time displayed on the screen. So over the months following the swap, I had some really shitty experiences, mainly regarding Hillary, that I'm not going to go into, as most of it wasn't actually because of her, but it was because of a certain person giving me a really hard time while I denied it was actually affecting me, when really it was giving me quite a bit of strife. My mental health well and truly plummeted. I broke up with my girlfriend because of it, and I was suicidal at multiple points. I suffered depression, which I had already struggled with for a few years. I had issues with sleeping, had panic attacks, suffered temptations of self-harm, and I gained a lot of weight, and I just wasn't really looking after myself. I felt a lot of pressure to perform and please when I was in no state to do so. I made a lot of bad choices that I wouldn't have made if my head was straight, but most of the time I either felt like shit or I didn't feel shit at all. The best way I can describe it was I felt numb and as if I was just in this vegetative state. And in all honesty, I still haven't fully recovered from all that, and that's something that I've had to be very conscious about. Hillary being around was a big reminder of all this and everything that I've lost, which plays a big part in my decision to sell her. I'm not looking for a pity party here, but I feel like this is sort of important to explain in order to give an idea of the weight that this whole process has actually had. It's been very emotional and just a thick, boggy mess, so just trying to get back on my feet and find a new horse has been a really daunting thing to face. In the midst of all this, I did endurance training and a 20-kilometer endurance ride on Josie, which I truly loved. I hadn't felt that burning passion for riding since eventing Leisha. I'd been on an endurance ride before and I knew that it was something that I wanted to pursue. At this point in time, I was also doing a lot of trail rides as I couldn't bring myself to attempt to clear my head to do arena work with Hillary, who was by no means an easy ride. I sold Merlyn, Leisha's half-brother, to my best friend in order to fund Azharu, a very special little Arabian Colt. He was now nearly 2 years old and a lot bigger than he is in these videos. He was an opportunity that I didn't really want to miss out on. I intend on Azharu being a bit of an all-rounder to do a bit of everything on, including endurance. either as a stallion or a gelding, depending on how he matures, though I am more inclined to keep him intact with the rate he is travelling. And also because I owe his breeders straws, so I would have a gelding that may retain studdish tendencies anyways, as he would have completed stud duties. I also like having a backup plan, being breeding or selling as a breeding horse if they decide to go and kamikaze themselves and can't be ridden. This is all relevant to my criteria for horse shopping. So anyways, I became really sour about riding. I had hit rock bottom motivation, especially with Hillary, and I really wasn't enjoying her anymore. I realised that we just didn't really end up on clicking how I'd hoped, and having her around honestly just made me upset. As I said, it was a huge reminder of all the bad experiences I went through and everything I'd lost. I did event her a bit, and while I had great fun with her on cross country, it just wasn't the same as it was with Leisha, and I really fell out of love with eventing and competing in general. I still wanted to compete, but just for fun, and not every weekend like I used to. I just became really sour and just wanted to have fun with nobody expecting anything of me. In the few months leading up to the end of the year, I was heavily debating selling Hillary. I wanted to progress in my riding, but in a direction just away from Hillary, like more trail rides and young horses projects, endurance. I just wanted to be able to love the sport again and pour myself into a horse that I really clicked with. Hillary is also a very high caliber and particular pony. She can be neurotic, but she's got so much talent to burn, and she really hates not having routine. I didn't really want to ride her, and she was hating sitting at home doing nothing because she really likes going out and actually doing stuff and being in work. So by December 2021, I was pretty sure that I was going to sell her. When I was staying up in Perth one weekend for a family Christmas gathering, I was scrolling through a horse sales website one night, purely just out of boredom, and two little mares popped up that really caught my eye. We originally weren't going to go looking until Hillary was sold, but we were only 45 minutes away from the stud instead of the usual 4 hours, so we decided to take advantage of that and go have a look the next morning, which was the 19th of December 2021. So I viewed both mares, and I absolutely fell in love with the little dark bay. She was beautiful to ride, especially for a green-broke horse. She was sensible, and I just enjoyed every minute of it, which for me was a huge win, as I hadn't enjoyed riding for a while. I ended up on purchasing her at the start of January and named her Mabel. She came home on the 28th of February, as we didn't have room for her until then. For some context, even before she came home, I had poured a lot of my hopes, dreams, and emotions into her. I was hoping Mabel would sort of be my saviour after the last year full of shit. I wanted to love life and love riding again, and I hoped that she would help me do that, hence naming her Mabel, which means lovable. I had so many dreams of her, and I fell hard and fast, just like I did with Hillary, and neither of them worked out in the end, which absolutely broke my heart into a million tiny little pieces. When Mabel came home, she was pretty highly strung and nervous, which wasn't very characteristic of her at her breeders. It was her first time moving, as I got her straight from the stud, so we put it down to needing to settle in more, and as such, for the first 5 weeks of her being home, we kept things pretty chill, and I just did a lot of groundwork, hand grazing, taking her on walks, etc., to get to know her. She had a saddle fitted to her while I was waiting for mine to be made to order. The saddle fitter warned me that it was still a poor fit, but she had fitted it to the best of its capability, and we came to the conclusion that it would be okay for very light riding just while I waited for the new one. She had bodywork where only her shoulders and neck came up a little bit tight, otherwise she was pretty okay. The next day we tried to have our first ride at home. Now, I haven't spoken of this incident publicly, and I heavily debated whether or not I would actually share this or the footage, but I want to be totally transparent. I put the saddle on her before and lunged her with it and the stirrups, which she was fine with, and I always warm up with some groundwork. She was great. When I got on her, I immediately looked down and I could feel that it was very low in the front. I knew it would slip forward if anything happened, But I made the conscious decision to continue, as I was just going to have a little walk and trot and call it a day. I was also stupid enough to not wear a body protector on our first ride at home, so I regret all of that. Anyways, we walked around for 10 minutes and she was really good, pretty relaxed and felt fine. We started to trot just after the center line in the arena onto a circle in the middle of the arena, and she felt calm and content to begin with. Now, when Mabel slows down, it's quite a slam on the brakes, kind of slow, as she's very sensitive to seat and still getting her balance, obviously, as a young horse, despite already being quite balanced. It's just a hard brake. When we started to come past my dad, who was filming, she slowed and wanted to move towards him, and the momentum and my weight being in the saddle caused the saddle to slip forward a fair bit. She flinched and then suddenly just exploded, and I came off pretty hard. I was very sore afterwards and I had a concussion. It has been the only fall to date where I have stood up and had to sit back down. I think I was in a lot of shock. Now, I don't think this is a dirty horse at all. I don't think that's something that she, just has in her all the time. And I think it was a fair reaction given all the things that were probably contributing to it. There was a lot of factors, namely, she's a Greenbroke horse who's had 3 months off. I knowingly rode her with a saddle that I knew would slip if anything happened, and I knew her slowdowns were pretty sharp, and her shoulders and neck were a bit tight the day before, so she probably felt really intruded upon and threatened when the saddle slipped over them, and that's a really scary thing to happen to a horse, especially a young green one. And also she never truly settled in, so I think her cup just overflowed. So after that, I went and stripped it all right back down. We went back to groundwork and I bought her the same saddle she was ridden in at her breeders. And I did a lot of positive reinforcement with the tack. I lunged her over some jumps with it to test if it would move, and she was all good. When I hopped back on a few weeks later, she wasn't much better at all. She was extremely anxious and bothered. She was extremely nerve-wracking to be on top of. The best way I could describe it is she felt like a ticking time bomb. She was so tense, just through her whole body, and her tail was clamped, which showed just how upset she was. She was really unsettled by the Colt, Azharu, being in the paddock next to the arena, and she tried to run away from that end of the arena whenever she got close. She was also just really defensive around the boys in general, and it became nerve-wracking just to walk her past their paddocks with her in hand. But she was especially defensive around Azharu, who was still intact, and he would never insinuate anything. He would never drop or nick her or do any coltish behaviour, but she just did not like him. By this point, I started to think about what she would be like in a warm-up arena with foreign horses of all sexes all around her, travelling at different paces in different directions. I could just see it becoming a nightmare. The next time I rode her, she was totally different. Instead of feeling like she was about to explode any second, she felt so shut down, and I could barely get her going, and she was so behind the leg, and she just felt very sticky and emotionally blocked, and that feeling also gave me the ick. I hate that feeling. And the rides after that were much the same. She was just very behind the leg and just wasn't present, and that worried me a lot. I decided to really go back to problem solving, as I really wanted to make it work, so we returned to even more groundwork. She had more body work from multiple people. She had her teeth done, we got her bloods taken and analysed for any abnormalities. We had the vets examine her, we reevaluated her diet, we kept her in a paddock with buddies, we did some long lining, we took her on more walks, we sourced multiple alternative therapists, such as animal communicators, who gave us some ideas to try, mainly just such as herbs and essential oil remedies, which she responded to quite well, and she definitely did become more content and was very engaging with the oils that she chose, which were all grounding and calming oils of patchouli, lavender and vetiver. Now these sessions were so emotional, and on 2 occasions I absolutely sobbed and just broke down in front of 2 complete strangers. They were very eye-opening and shook my world, honestly. And one thing that nearly all of them said was that Mabel said she wanted me to follow my intuition more, and so I did just that. And I found so many amazing things in life because of it. And through all of this, I think she's really helped me to try and better myself and given me ways to grieve through my pain. I've lost a fair amount of weight this year already. I've been eating healthier, I've been looking after myself. I sourced a naturopath and started taking supplements that have really helped me with my sleep and energy levels. And I never would have done any of this if not for Mabel. So even though it didn't work out and that broke my heart, I wouldn't take any of it back. And with the animal communicators, I know that I said that they all said Mabel wanted me to follow my intuition, and that is a very generic thing that you can say to pretty much anyone, that your horse wants you to follow your intuition. But the thing that tripped me up was that there was so many things that each of them said that there was no way they could have possibly known. Things from her diet to just paddock management, like who she was buddied with. Even the people that we did Zoom calls with knew that she was paddocked with like another mare and that she liked this mare. She could have been paddocked on her own or with a gelding, things like that. And like one of them knew that she got ridden in a sheepskin saddle pad, and she didn't know any of my socials or hadn't seen any photos of it either. So it was just a really cool experience for me to have with her. After 3.5 months with her, I felt exhausted for options, and without trying to sound crude, I didn't want to spend money, time and effort for however many months or years it took to see if she would improve, with no guarantee that she would be able to be the all-rounder I was looking for, especially when the change in her demeanour from when she was at her breeders to when she moved to mine was so drastic. In the end, I think she just didn't cope with the move. So in June of 2022, I made the very heartbreaking decision to ask the breeders if they would accept her back, and they said she was welcome to come home. We left at 6:45 in the morning to drive her back to the stud on the 18th of June, and as soon as she got off the float and realised where she was, her demeanour returned to what it was the day that I met her. She was so much more confident and relaxed, and that was really reassuring for me to see, so I knew I made the right decision. So after staying a little while for a chat with some tea and cookies on the side, we said see you later to Mabel, which was really rough on my heart. I started to quietly look around for what may be available for purchase, as I was desperate to have something to work with that I really clicked with. I did have Merlyn back, as I purchased him back at the start of the year, as the friend that I sold him to decided to get out of horses, and he was really all I had left of leisure. But my train of thought with him was horses only get so many steps in their lifetime, and I didn't want to use his steps up in endurance, as I felt he wouldn't really excel in it and it would be a bit of a waste. I wanted to keep him as a little dressage / eventer / show jumper. But also he isn't really my type of horse per se. He isn't incredibly sharp or spirited. He's pretty chill and laid back, but I prefer something that's a little more lively. But he is pretty special to me, so I am probably going to be keeping him for a little while, but he won't be an endurance horse. So I was officially back on the hunt for my endurance horse and all-rounder. So I'm going to end the video here. The purpose of this was really just to give some context and explain what's happened over the last year, as so much has changed and it must look pretty crazy on the outside. Well, it's just as crazy on the inside, but now you know why. So yeah, in the next video, part 2, I'll go into what my criteria was while I was horse shopping, what kind of horses I was looking at, and just really how I went about it all. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's a bit different to what I used to do, but I feel like this would be a good starting point to update you guys on everything so you know where my life is at and where it's been. So for now, I'll see you later until the next one. Thanks for watching, and bye!